Well, for those people that are just checking in, you're on the third of our sneak previews on what's going to be happening with regard to the Laugh-O-Gram building. The first one was the Laugh-O-Gram Legacy in December 3rd, and then the second one was a peek at the new Laugh-O-Gram, which was primarily focused on what Gould Evans, our architects, had done. And tonight is going to be an overview of what's going on with regard to Troost, generally going from 23rd Street down to practically Linwood. So I'm going to do a real quick introduction of the speakers, and if they can just say who they're with. Diane, you want to start it off? You're muted.
Diane Cleaver, Urban Neighborhood Initiative.
Audrey Navarro.
Thanks. I'm Audrey Navarro with Clemens Real Estate.
Brian.
I'm Brian Starner. I'm with Ride KC Development Corporation, which is the development arm for transit-oriented development of KCATA.
Chrissy.
Hi, I'm Chrissy Dastrup. I am the co-founder and board chair of Troost Market Collective.
Mary.
Hi, Mary Esselman from Operation Breakthrough.
And Tyler.
Tyler Baker, Operation Breakthrough as well.
I think I've got everyone. There's your introduction of the presenters. Ron, you want to go to the next one?
Yep. Just a second. Here we go. Oops, went backwards. Didn't mean to do that. Here we go.
Ugly looking bloke. That's me. That was as of about 3 years ago when I was 10 pounds heavier and you could see the double chin real easily. So let's move on and forget about that one right now. So the first one up tonight is going to be Diane with regard to Troost in the urban neighborhood. I just wanted to welcome everybody, both the attendees and the presenters. I wanted to say special thanks to Ron Green, particularly for coordinating and initiating this sneak preview. I think it's done a good job with regard to kind of getting out what's going on in the neighborhood in this one, but also what's happening with regard to the Laugh-O-Gram facility. This project, the Laugh-O-Gram facility, the building is actually owned by a small not-for-profit. Thank you, Walt Disney. And our hope is that this is going to reinforce the momentum of Troost development that's currently underway. Kansas City's urban core has started to heal after nearly a century of disinvestment and decline. So our hope is that the progress on Troost redevelopment is going to push forward. So with that, Diane, I think you're first up.
Okay, and thank you. And Ron, if you would go to my first slide, not that one, get that one. I'm like Gary, get that one off. Yeah, so again, I'm with the Urban Neighborhood Initiative. And what I'm presenting is from a partnership initiative we have called the Catalytic Urban Redevelopment Initiative. And so next slide. Yeah. So that, which we call KC Cure, is actually a partnership initiative. And the partners are UNI, LIST, the Local Investment Support Corporation, the city, Mid-America Regional Council, and ULI. And that group came together with a goal of developing strategies to catalyze development in the UNI area. UNI area is the target area of our organization. And that whole target area is Troost to Prospect and Truman Road to 52nd Street. So those are the four partners. As far as on the ground work, it's been LISC and UNI leading that work, and the project director is at LISC. He's Daniel Serta. When we first started within the whole UNI area, we had a consultant group come in and they helped us identify 4 catalytic areas within the UNI, thinking that if these areas take off, it would really help impact all of the rest of the area. And one of those 4 areas was the 31st and Troost area. Next slide, please. So that led us to work toward a revitalization scenario for that area. We convened a group of stakeholders, a broad group of stakeholders, and we contracted with BNIM to help us develop that revitalization scenario based on the input of all the stakeholders. And so on the next slide, you'll see that we had 50 participants, and a number of the participants are presenting today, and I'm sure others will be in the audience. But it was neighborhoods, business, nonprofits, and developers, city staff, and others. So it was a broad and diverse group. And yeah, so you can go to the next slide. So the group came up with guiding principles. This is the whole stakeholder group that we felt should drive the revitalization of the area. And to a great extent, it was driven by equity and diversity. That was the overarching principle. But among the guiding principles were to reveal the history of Troost, that area which has a rich and diverse history, from the Osage Trail going through to being a slave plantation to containing millionaires row. So to reveal the history, restore the urban fabric to that area, which used to be so much more rich and vital. And that would include revitalizing the Troost retail zone. Again, when I was growing up, I lived in that area. It was a nice little retail zone. Develop mixed income housing, which is important to you and I, and was important to all the partners, that there is a mix of income in the housing for all economic levels. And then to create, I'm sorry, can you all see me okay and here and the presentation okay? Okay. And then the third guiding principle was to create a generous public realm in terms of streets, sidewalks, park, vacant lots, to make that a generous public realm. And so moving to the next slide. The other 3 guiding principles were to support health and wellness in the area and support small business development and job creation, which are vital to the revitalization of the area. And while we're doing that, develop community capacity, which means for the residents or in and around that area now, and for businesses, the small businesses in and around that area now, to bring them along. So after establishment or agreed upon the guiding principles, we move to the next slide. Some agreed upon strategies as to how we will get there. And our report is really much longer. I'm going to focus on the strategies. There were 33 of them. I have most of them up here. I won't hit on every single one due to time, but these were the strategies agreed upon. And for each one, they were identified as a long, a mid, or a near-term goal. And the dollars after each one indicate kind of the cost. Most have $2 signs or 3. There are very few that just have 1. And then those in red, these were identified as catalytic strategies. So if these could occur, this would really help catalyze the rest of the area. So a history of Troost Museum, incorporating Troost within public and private spaces, and then supporting revitalization of the Laugh-O-Gram studio. A Troost overlay, which is in existence, but this was to enforce the Troost overlay guidelines. So the next slide, I'm going to try to move fairly quickly through the strategies. So you see 2 catalytic strategies on this page. One was to fund and build shared parking facilities, which we felt were critical to the redevelopment of the area. The other catalytic strategy was to attract neighborhoods serving retail. And by neighborhood serving, that means that could serve the people that live, in and around a 1 mile area. The broker of the land transfer was, there are a lot of land in the area that is public, quasi-public, or belongs to utility that's been sitting vacant for some time. So the thought was, could some of that be brokered for some other usage? And then moving to the next slide, there you see a couple again of catalytic strategies. One being to identify and secure an anchor tenant for the retail zone. And then redevelopment of the KCATA property. I think you're going to hear something about that today. An identity for the area and opportunities for small business startups. And the next slide. Resolve property ownership issues in the retail zone. There were some complex issues about ownership, and that was important to get that straight as we move forward. Mixed income housing, again, deemed to be very important. We don't want to gentrify the area. We want new people to come in, but we need a mixed income community. New housing units and connecting homeowners with repair resources. That is to try to support people who are currently in the area so that everything is not just for new residents coming in. And so the next slide, you'll see, again, I'm not going to read every one, but you can see what the near-term strategies were. I will talk about those strategies viewed as catalytic. So enforce the new Kansas City complete street ordinance, thinking this area would have complete streets, and then to support a community improvement district. And I don't know if you're going to hear about that today, but that's one of those that is underway. Next slide. Provide access to healthy foods was deemed very important, with a full service grocery store or something that could really provide healthy food in the area really being a lack. It was also recommended as a near-term strategy that we try to coordinate PIAC applications in the area, develop programs for all ages at Troost Park. And there's some movement in terms of development of Troost Park, a shared bike program, and again, attract a healthy food provider to the area. Other agreed upon strategies had to do with kind of sustainability of what's in the area and including incentivize sustainable design and construction for all built projects, the support creation of an artist maker space hub. And I'm thinking with Chrissy here, we may hear something about that today. And support job creation programs in and for the area. And then the next slide. Access to jobs. Involve the Center for Neighborhoods to try to empower the community leaders, again, wanting to engage and give full engagement to current leaders in the area. There was a suggestion for a coalition of neighborhood associations in the area, and then local educational access through strategic partnerships. And that is most of the strategies. A few were left off. I didn't want to bore you with all of them, but that gives you an idea of how comprehensive it was and the really good input that we got from so many people. The KC Cure continues to work, and as do many others, which you will hear about today. We've worked on a community improvement district in the area, and I think we're about to move that along. Gary's been working with us. I think we're at a critical point where we can really take our next step. And also there's, as I said, there's been some movement on Troost Park with the Park Department agreeing. We supported a PIAC application from one of the neighborhood associations, and the Park Department has agreed to really put some money into that park in the coming years. So you will hear more from our other speakers about all the progress underway in a number of other areas. And thank you.
I think what we agreed to is that we'd take one question right after the presenter but we'd hold most of them until the very end of the presentation. So any questions for Diane? You've wowed them.
I guess so. Thank you.
Next one, Ron. So the reason why we're looking at that development momentum along Troost, I'll give you a little bit of story. About 4 years ago, when I first got involved with the Thank You Walt Disney, I approached one of our main foundations here in town and about whether they would be interested in helping us with this project. We probably got somewhere in the neighborhood of around $5 million of cost to bring that facility on to where we need it to be. And the response was, we just really don't like the neighborhood that much. That the surrounding area just doesn't seem to be a good fit. And they were cautious about whether they wanted to put money into one facility when the surrounding community was kind of on its back. So one of the things that we've been looking at is the development that's been occurring, particularly recently, but this presentation will drop back to about 10 years. What you'll see is that the investment, and I've only got about half of it, and if you see things that I got wrong on any of your projects, let me know on it. I'll be happy to change them, but this is about half of the projects, and you're up around almost $500 million right now in investment and about 600 jobs. Ron, next one. So I'm going to take you through a real quick walkthrough, and I'm going to let you read, and I'm just going to do some real quick narration. We're going to start at the north end up around 23rd Street and proceed south with the photographs and a little bit of the narrative. So I'll let you read what it's there so I don't have to go through each of these things. New Horizons is a female-oriented business or female-owned business. They were one of the early ones to come in there in 2012. Ron, next one. Of course, the Kansas City, Missouri Health Department was a major one. They're still scratching their head trying to find out what their actual investment was for me. So, but they've got about 226 full-time employees. One of the things about the health sector in that area is that it draws people there, particularly for residential purposes. Increasingly, what the hospitals are finding, what the health department is finding, is that their employees want to live in proximity to where they're actually going to work. Ron, next one. This is a new hotel just opened this past year. Interestingly enough, I'll let you read again the narrative on this thing, but it's also done a pretty good job, I think, of outreach to some of the other nonprofits. So for example, the Ronald McDonald House has seen, because of the influx of COVID into Truman Medical Center, they've oftentimes not had enough room for people in the Ronald McDonald House. They're south of the dental school, and La Quinta has dropped prices so that people can accommodate to that in kind of a living situation. Ron, next one. Nope, going backwards.
Oh, sorry.
So this is UMKC's Hospital Hill Apartments. Been there opened since 2014. And it's a LEED certified project of about $30 million in investment. Next one. I'm going to go over Beacon Hill. I'll let you read a little bit about it, but this one has been a lot of high-end houses, particularly between 23rd Street down to about 27th Street and Troost over to Bruce Watkins. Let's go to the next one, Ron. Gives you some sense. The average price on these homes is coming in at about $400,000. So it's a pretty upscale neighborhood. Next one, Ron.
Oops.
There you go. There's a big one. It gives you some sense of what's happening. I think the good side of it is that of the 50, or I'm sorry, the 60 or so houses that have been done, according to Dan Musser, about 50 of those have been done on empty property. So it's not like you're forcing out lower income residents or people that have been there for a while. It's taking advantage of a common problem that you've got, particularly in and around Troost and to the east of it, that you've just got a lot of vacant property. Next one. Longfellow Heights apartment has been there for a goodly amount of time. That's a sign. Go to the next one, Ron. They've done it in 3 phases. The first one started in 1991. It's been a very successful project. 3 phases. It was completed in July of 2001, about 306 units. Next one, Ron. It was a partnership of a private sector, of some of our philanthropic organizations here in Kansas City and the city of Kansas City. And it's been kind of a bulwark. It was a land clearance for redevelopment authority property before this development kicked in. It takes up about 3.5 blocks, 2 of them on Troost, and then another 1.5 blocks to the east of it. Next one, Ron. These are new ones. They're just in the process of finishing these things off. East side of Troost, 250 units. Beacon Hill, interestingly enough, this was the first federal opportunity zone project where someone actually used that federal incentive that we've been able to identify. Next one. These are the Mercado apartments, and they just opened this past year as well. 26th to 27th, it's on the east side of Troost. 180 units. Millhouse is the developer for it. Go to the next one, Ron. They've taken up pretty much a full block. So the side of the apartment buildings that you're seeing on the right side of this screen were really the back side of the apartments that you just saw in the photo. There's another set of apartments that basically take up the whole block. Let's do the next one. This one is a block to the east of the Mercado that is a new home that's in the process of construction as we speak. I couldn't find out much in the way of information on it. Next one. This is the park-like setting. This was land that used to be owned by the Nazarene Church. They sold it to the Kansas City, Missouri School District. And go to the next one. This one is, of course, the Kansas City, Missouri School District's Board of Education at 2901 Troost. They've got about 200 full-time employees in there, and they got the building and the property for about $4.5 million, and along with a whole bunch of furniture and fixtures, from what I understand. That property, that park-like property that you saw before this one, is ripe for development. They have no plans for it at the present time that I know of. Next one. This is Wonder Shop and Flats, and Audrey can probably do a better job on this one. This one basically took, if you look up on the top right side of the photograph, you'll see a bread delivery truck up on their roof, which I think is kind of cool. Used to be, most of you are probably too young to remember it, but they used to actually deliver milk and bread to people's doorsteps. And so Wonder Lofts, which is a redevelopment of the old Wonder Bread factory, kind of memorialized that period of time with that delivery van on the roof. And I'll let Audrey speak to that or answer any questions about it, since they're kind of representing it. Next one.
Sure. I might just say along those lines, Gary, that we have a new salon moving into the one space that was vacant. We actually moved out of that space on Sunday, and the new tenant moved in on Monday. So it's been great. And the Combine opened in the restaurant space, and they've just been a great concept for the building.
As I understand it, there's another 100,000 square feet on the east side. Is that right?
There's some vacant ground behind it, yeah.
If you haven't been through the building, it's really a really cool redevelopment. I spent about 30 years in economic development, and we tried our best to keep that Wonder Bread factory up and running, but it just was not in the cards. And then it sat empty for a prolonged period of time. And the redevelopers have done a terrific job with regard to an alternative use of it. Ron, and then the next one. So the construction fences are up. This will be the new Metropolitan Community College Penn Valley Manufacturing and Skilled Trades Building. They were nice enough to give me the information on what they're doing with it. They haven't had any formal announcement of what they're up to with it, but it's a lot of the consolidation of what used to be down at the Business and Technology campus down there on the northeast part of Kansas City, down off Universal. They're going to offer welding, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning training, industrial technology, building maintenance and construction, computer integrated machine manufacturing, and construction management. So it's gonna, I think, reinforce a lot of the stuff that's going on there already with regard to kind of a training instruction center and what we've got in mind with regard to what Laugh-O-Gram's eventually going to be, or a good chunk of it's going to be as well. Ron, next one. That's Ruby Jeans. I think most of you are familiar with it. I couldn't get a response on investment that he put into it, but next one. Mary, Tyler, you want to talk about this one? This is the muffler shop that's just south of Ruby Jeans on the west side of Troost.
Mary, go ahead if you'd like to.
What I was going to say is, why don't we hold off till we present, because we've got
Yep.
some other slides to go with it.
Okay.
You good?
Ron, you want to go to the next one then? This is Operation Breakthrough's new building on the northwest corner with the bridge that I think is a good symbolic visual of connecting Troost across the two sides of it as a facility that in a certain sense is that link across Kansas City, what historically has been the racial and economic divide of Troost. Next one, Ron. This is Reconciliation Services Plan. Father Justin Matthews couldn't be with us tonight. He had a conflicting meeting. It's my understanding they are in the process of planning on the redevelopment of that facility. Brian will take this up a little bit more. I just had to do it because it's a really cool mural, both of the Native American heritage of this particular area of town, and also a great shot of Mickey and Walt Disney. So this will give you a next one, Ron. That gives you some sense of where that is. So southwest corner of 31st and Troost. Go to the next one. And Brian will do more detail on this one. This one's under construction. It's almost done. It's the Alhaven apartment building, southwest corner. So it's one block west of Troost at 31st and Harrison. It'll have about 50 units in it. It's an interesting one that they are going to make 25% of the units in there dedicated to transitional housing for young adults in the area of 18 to 25-year-old that have got HIV, AIDS, or that are homeless. It's going to be owned by Save Inc. And it's my understanding in talking to their CEO, Blaine Proctor, that they also own 5 other buildings in and around that area, particularly on Harrison. So I think they're going to be a good partner for us in the future. Ron, next one. This is the east side. It's the Midtown Development Project. Tim Bennett. It's kind of the primary person that's involved in this thing. They are really taking on about 80% of the block between 31st Street down to Linwood Boulevard. So that's the Shankman and Michelson buildings, what you were seeing there. This is a shot of some of the buildings that Legacy Crossings got underway. Audrey's going to take on more in the way of detail on this one, so I'll leave this one alone. Ron? This is a shot of the southwest corner of Troost and Linwood. So the grass that you're seeing immediately closest to you is still PIEA, Planned Industrial Expansion Authority property. And then the two pieces of property that are closest to that white building are owned by CS Midtown. And there's plans and actually construction underway with that large kind of grayish white building in the background. It's another one that Tim Bowman's involved in. Ron? This is the southeast corner of Linwood and Troost. It's the old Cats, I'm sorry, it's one of the properties that John Hoffman's looking at, and John, I think, has got the interest in the east side of this particular piece of property, and then Bowman has got an interest in the west side of it. This is a shot from Forest looking west. So what you're seeing is the back of the properties on Troost that I showed you before, kind of to demonstrate what the construction is that's underway currently with regard to both demolition, but also the reconstruction of a lot of those buildings that front on Troost. Ron? So this is Mac Properties. They're in the process of taking on all four corners of Troost and Armour Boulevard. They're projecting about 320 units of residential and about 25,000 square feet of retail with an overall investment of about 70 million. That's my favorite building. So that's a current photo of the building on the left, and the photo on the right is what Gould Evans has worked up with regard to hopefully what the building's going to look like when we may be able, we're in the process of finalizing a facade improvement construction project. So the building hopefully will look a lot more like the one on the right and the one on the left. So I'd introduce Audrey. She's up next with regard to it, and that's followed by Brian, Chrissy, and then Mary and Tyler.
Thanks, Gary. I'm going to talk a little bit about that 3100 block of Troost. This is a quick snapshot of all of the redevelopment that's going on that block. And I think that the Disney building, as Gary mentioned, is part of that. Operation Breakthrough is shown on here. I think it's just really significant to see how much redevelopment is happening alongside how much planned development is happening. We started on this quadrant about 5 years ago. And at that time, this map looked a lot different. In fact, I updated it for this presentation, and I feel like it was mostly properties that were available and or vacant. And so I'm just really excited to see all of the progress and construction going on in this corridor. And if you'll move to the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the projects that we're working on in that quadrant. The first building is immediately next door to the ATA lot. It's 3116 and 3118 Troost. It's that building that has the mural on the side. We are under construction with a renovation of that building. And as Diane had mentioned earlier, one of the major goals or initiatives that has come out of the KC Cure community engagement is really providing goods and services to the neighbors within a 1 mile radius of this site, and particularly solving for the food desert equation. And so we're really excited to announce a Troost Community Market. By the way, that is not the final name. That's a placeholder at this stage. But it will be a full service grocery store on the first floor of that building. And the concept really is intended to serve the community. There's not a lot of options for, especially within the 1 mile radius of that site for food. And, you know, we just really want to be an alternative to residents in that area to families in that area. I should note that this building is immediately across the street from Operation Breakthrough. And there are 600 families every day who are bringing their kids to Operation Breakthrough. So we really hope that this is a service to the community and a community gathering space. It will also include a coffee shop and a demonstration kitchen. So we're really excited about that, and we anticipate delivering it in the fourth quarter of 2021. Next slide. This is the building in the middle of the block, 3124 Troost, which is complete. It's ready for occupancy. The building is 12,000 square feet on 2 floors, and it has a walkout lower level to the parking lot in the back. And it's a really great space for creative office and or retail. We have 2 other buildings that are under renovation adjacent to this, including one of the original Hellsberg Diamond stores. And those both we expect to deliver within maybe 3 to 4 months, definitely by the second quarter of 2021. And then I think that that's all that I have. Are there any questions about progress on this corridor? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Starner.
Brian, are you on mute?
I am. I'm sure not everybody lip reads. So I want to thank Ron and Gary and the others for the invitation to be here tonight and join others on the panel. This evening, Diane kicked off talking about the work of KC Cure, and really what you're seeing from Audrey's presentation, mine, and I'm sure Chrissy's, begins to reflect this broader vision for the region. And just to set a little context before we get into the presentation, KCATA has been in operation for about 55 years. And it has traditionally, up until very recently, been a bus company. And it's really a well-run bus company. But a series of issues began to happen well prior to my arrival. I've been there 5 years. And that was recognizing that there was a declining ridership and a declining revenue base from riders in the region. We serve 7 counties. 4 of the counties service contracts with Kansas City, Missouri. We also have the Joe, the DOT, and the Indy Bus, and then a host of other contracts within the region. But to give some context about how life has changed, much of what we saw in slides earlier today was Laugh-O-Gram Studios and what was life when Walt Disney was there and what's it like today. To give you some idea of the business model we're trying to operate, in 1930, Kansas City and the area that we served doing transit prior to the creation of KCATA represented about 81 square miles. 500,000 people lived in that 81 square miles. Today in Kansas City, Missouri, we're serving 4 counties and 319 square miles. And the density and the geographic spread of the region are really counter to what makes transit work really well. So over the last 5 years, working with our boards, we crafted the creation of an initiative to look at how do we begin to stitch back together what works so well for the region. The result was the creation of Ride KC Development Corporation. It's a 501c3 corporation. It has its own board. It's a recommending and real estate transit-oriented development body, but our specific mission is transit-oriented development, jobs access, and public policy to support the previous 2. And what you'll find within the region and why our focus on 31st and Troost is so important is that when you have a corridor like Troost or Prospect specifically, and you look at what's happened over the last 70 to 80 years, as the urban core has hollowed out with population and commerce and the ecosystem that was once thriving there, it makes running a transit organization very, very difficult. But the benefit of what we're talking about today at 31st and Troost and generally the Casey Cure area is that Troost and Prospect and Main Street represent about 35 to 40% of all of our net annual regional ridership. So give you an idea, we move about 16 million people a year as riders, and 35 to 40% happen on those three corridors. Prospect is about 2.4 million annual riders. Troost is about 2 million. 31st and Troost specifically is one of the busiest locations on our entire system regionally in terms of riders and transfer points. So when we decided to get in the business of fostering real estate development, not always taking it on ourselves, but looking to facilitate it, the intent was, how do we create an environment that takes advantage of the plans that came out of the Casey Cure process? And the result was we issued an RFP for 3 transit-oriented development sites: 3rd and Grand, 31st and Troost, and 12th and Charlotte. 12th and Charlotte is where we have the plans for East Village Transit Center, which has opened. COVID has tempered things, so we have set aside the efforts to bring about transit-oriented development there for the time being. And instead, we focused our energies on the other 2. We have a letter of intent with Millhouse for this site after going through a competitive process, and we're still working to bring about development there. That specific project, for interest of tonight's conversation, allows for us to bring forth as planned a 51-unit residential development, very similar in terms of framework for what Millhouse did at the Mercado, but at this location, they will help maintain and service the transit assets that are already in place, including policing and trash pickup and lighting, artwork, etc. And the goal for Millhouse is to take that property and their interest in property in the southwest corner at Troost and Linwood and build another 120 to 140 units and scale the development being constructed at the same time with about 200 units coming online. So that's part of what helps make things work for them, and why we are working on this project. We have several others that are happening within the region, but I'd be remiss, and we can move the slide to the next screen. This gives you an idea of the 2 part property. The property that I'm specifically focusing in on for 31st and Troost is in the upper right-hand corner. We picked up a derelict residential building. It had been purchased and that stalled out on redevelopment, and it was on Harrison, and that's the dogleg portion of the L that you see. And that lot, plus I think we had 3 additional parcels of KCATA. After going through lots of efforts to try to structure the project, we have an agreement to sell the real estate and putting conditions in place that maintain the quality of transit-oriented development. We also are excited about what happens further to the south, because at some point, we also are very active with streetcar, as you're probably aware, and the Rock Island Railroad corridor. And Linwood has been discussed as a bus rapid transit line, or possibly, if things are very beneficial in the way of grants or other funding, streetcar. And that would go all the way out to the stadium complex. And it's got the setup from a geography and width standpoint to support that type of improvement. So all these things really do fit together, and you maybe don't associate the stadium complex with this location, but because we serve 7 counties, when we look at a location or a corridor, through the work of the corporation, we've moved KCATA from a singular transaction focus to how do we stitch together systems. And we don't want to lead it and drive it solely, but we want to be catalytic and help to foster the public-private marketplace to work together. We're also working very closely with lots of developers in the city. Let's move to the next slide. So this is a massing representation that Millhouse has put together. The building at the top center is approximately the rendition of what we'd be looking at 31st and Troost, 51 residential units, and if my memory serves me correctly, we were 3, maybe 4 stories. There would not be retail in it. And although that was part of what was desirable, we also were realistic that with everything being described here tonight, what Audrey shared and Diane and what others will cover, there's a lot already happening, and we don't want to dilute the market with too much real estate. We wanted to put, frankly, a focus on housing in that location. And as we go forward doing these projects in the city and around the region, we're going to continue to amplify what we do and how we do it to get greater and greater public policy outcomes for the neighborhoods that we're advancing projects in. We're very active on Prospect right now, and we own real estate, and we are working on advancing that real estate. Not probably time to talk about it here, but the idea is how do we serve as a catalytic force, not to implement our own plan, but something frankly that helps bring back the economics to the neighborhoods that are in need of population with incomes that support shopping and dining and jobs access. Let's move to the next slide. This is another view and perspective. This would be looking to the southwest. And the project will bring on, I believe, 56 parking spaces, 51 units would be built. So there's a few extra to support what's happening within the immediate area. And part of what we're intent on doing is bringing this to market. And for anybody that's on this call that isn't already aware, COVID and the ability to bring forward projects and get financing with COVID is very challenging. But being an institutional body, we're here for the long haul. We're not going away. We're going to be providing transit and transportation for decades to come. Our intent is to make sure that we're bringing about the right type of development in this area that serves the entire KC Cure area as once envisioned. You can see from this rendition of massing, the artwork still remains in place. That will be part of what we do. And just for purposes of declaring it, our intent is to still be able to provide visibility of the mural that's on the wall for the Clements building that's being redeveloped. I think that's all that I have. You might see if there's another slide, Ron. Oh, this is a ground view rendition. Gary had a very similar slide. Let's go to the next one. This is the home that was torn down. And for anybody that's familiar with this development in the area, if you sit too long, things disappear. I think the previous owner who was trying to redevelop that home had just built the new fence, and we went out there one day and it was gone. So it saved us tearing it down and hauling it away, but lots of problems with those trailers and people living in them. And I know it's a problem for everybody in the area trying to restore what's in everyone's interest with investment, commerce, and residents. But thankfully, this got torn down last summer along with other demolition we did at 35th and Prospect. And the property basically goes from that home to the left, which takes it up to 30th. And yes, thank you, Ron. And let's go to the last slide. I believe this is it. This is, I think this is more reflective of the Linwood site, but it gives you an idea of approximately what the building would look like. Very similar up on 31st and Troost. And I would close with part of what Frank White III and I have been working with the staff of Ride KC Development Corporation. We have a mandate from the KCATA board and from our own board. I think I saw Dr. Alicia Dickens on this call. She's now our neighbor across the street. We're in the Wonder Building on the second floor, and she's helping to bring online the Business Technology Center. And we are looking at a strategy that allows us the ability to work long-term on facilitating development and de-risking development in the corridor. We're working with lots of different parties, Sunflower, we have Crandall EPC, Bill Crandall EPC, and Dan Carr at Third and Grand. And at some point, as we advance projects elsewhere, we expect to see a combination of nonprofits, the city, and Ride KC Development Corporation take a role in fostering development. But there are only two of us, and we don't want to get over our skis. So we've teamed up with a group to help advise strategically how we go about this process, and includes Gould Evans and Dennis Strait, Chris Sally, Kevin Klinkenberg. And we're looking at bringing on those team members in 2021 to help us deploy, because we're going to pick up an even larger role on Main Street. And we are committed to the east side. We'll be there, and we are there, and we're active not only here, but over on Prospect as well. That concludes my presentation.
Gary, you're up. Gary, you're on mute.
Any specific questions for either Brian or Audrey? If not, we'll hold them to the end. Go ahead, Chrissy, you're up.
Okay, hi, I'm up. Hi, I'm Chrissy Dastrup. I'm the co-founder and board chair of Troost Market Collective. Very happy to be here tonight. And, you know, Troost Market Collective is a nonprofit that we started about 4 years ago now. And it's been incredible to watch the very quick rate at which things are being built on Troost. And it's, you know, I live just off of Troost, 1 block off on Armour and Campbell. And really there just has not been a lot of residential density along Troost or active businesses for a long time, until all of a sudden there was. And so, you know, about the time that was starting to happen, we formed Troost Market Collective with the idea that this area could be an asset and a fun place to be for the community that is there and the community that was to come. And that we could provide programming, creative placemaking, and activities that would engage not only the community that's east and west of Troost, bringing those communities together after decades of, you know, being divided and having a lot of racial strife, but to have to really engage in programming that was welcoming to everyone, and doing that through arts and working with creative entrepreneurs. So when we first started, we actually were working with Audrey Navarro with our big dream of what we wanted Troost Market Collective to be. And she said, well, you know, we have a bunch of buildings that are about to be boarded up. What do you think about doing some murals on those boarded up buildings? And we said, okay, let's do it. So on the left, you'll see a lot of those murals that we completed those over about a month in 2017. I think we had a couple of leftover ones in 2018, but that was really kind of the first time that we brought art to the streets, and we engaged local artists from the area, and asked them to paint, you know, kind of what Troost meant to them, what inspired them, what this community meant to them. And so we had some incredible murals go up, and we thought that we might be onto something. We're able to collaborate with a lot of stakeholders on Troost. Down there in the bottom right-hand corner, those are some of the kiddos from Operation Breakthrough who helped Carly Ray paint her mural. And so that was just a really kind of a fun project that was our first one that we did, and kind of kicked off our organization. Okay, next slide. So the next year, we wanted to do something more and bigger, which are my two favorite words. And we wanted to engage the communities. And I had recently been reading a study about a psychologist who would measure the hormone levels of two strangers, and then he would put them in a room for them to play video games together, and then remeasure their stress hormones after they had played video games together. And the conclusion was that the hormone levels of these two strangers, after they had been in a room just playing video games, were comparable to the hormone levels that you would expect to see from people who were friends and knew each other. So we wanted to do something that would provide a space and a place for people to play and engage with one another and become closer neighbors, closer friends, building relationships, all around this idea that that Troost does not have to be in the future what it's been in the past, and that the people who care about this area are the ones who can create a better future for Troost. And so we had Troostapalooza, which was a big street festival, highly produced, music, giant bounce houses. We collaborated with a lot of people around town from UMKC to a lot of local entrepreneurs. In the top left, you'll see like little tents. Those are all makers selling their goods. And we really liked this because Troost Market Collective, our mission is really to connect creative entrepreneurs with opportunities that help them become more profitable and sustainable. And this was a great opportunity for them to do that by selling in a craft fair that we just had them come to. And then all of these people came because there was so much to do outside of just the craft fair, but people seemed to have a really good time and we kind of thought we were onto something. Next slide. This was around the time that Troost was starting to get a lot of attention. That's Brian Williams, I think, on the left. The Troost divide was popping up in documentaries, national news. The bridge was being built at Operation Breakthrough, and all eyes were really on Troost and the history of Troost and the racial strife that, you know, was tied to Troost over history and redlining and just all of those things. Everyone was a lot more aware of that, seemingly for the first time, where mass parts of our communities that weren't on Troost knew about the history of Troost. And so that was a really interesting time when awareness was really coming to the area right around the time that a lot of this development was starting to happen. Next slide. So we did Troostapalooza a second year in a row, 2019. We got a little bit of rain that year, but luckily we were able to go into the Wonder Lofts and keep the party going. But again, just a really great time with neighbors, people who were coming on to some of the 31st Street development. That's Sharon Thompson from 31st Street down there in the bottom right. You know, it was a great opportunity for us to really be getting to know the people who were on Troost for the long haul. There's the Wonder Bread truck in the top middle with the mayor. That thing's really cool. It also holds a keg, just so you all know. Next slide. This is just more of Troostapalooza 2019. UMKC basketball, girls and boys basketball team have been participants. We had pickleball on the streets with chicken and pickle. We had an incredible lineup of local musicians both years. And we really, I think through that, we brought a lot of interest to Troost, and we allowed people to see Troost through the eyes of this place is amazing and fun and diverse, and people from east and west of Troost will and can come here and enjoy themselves. And so the idea that we talked about a lot was, you know, Troost is the dividing line. Well, we're gonna stomp out that dividing line with the feet of people who say no more and say that there's a better future for Troost. Next slide. Okay, and then last year we knew we weren't going to be able to do Troostapalooza because of COVID, but we did something a little different. We partnered with the NAACP of Kansas City, the Urban League of Greater Kansas City, City Hall, and then us, Troost Market Collective, and we brought 6 Black Lives Matter street murals to the city, and one of them was on Troost. You can go ahead and push play on that video. This is way more fun than me talking. It's a really cool video of that day. I'm gonna have to turn the volume up.
Tell the rest of the world, this is what Kansas City is all about. We come together in difficult times.
The message that I hope it brings is to end racism, plain and simple. Just end racism, love everyone for who they are.
There's a music track that goes with this. I don't know why it's not playing, but these murals were so much fun. They were an opportunity for us to really take this concept of creative placemaking to a whole new level. That's Troost. Michael Toombs painted the Black Lives Matter, or designed the Black Lives Matter on Troost, and it really showcases significant Black history events and people, and it's an amazing mural. This was an incredible point in time while our whole country was really struggling with what was going on with
that our lives have
shootings
value.
and murders
Even though we
of,
see things happening
of
around
Black
us that
community
imply
members.
something different,
We
these
in our own
murals
city
is a reminder
were
that our
grappling with
lives
that, and everybody, you know,
wanted
was
to engage multiple
it was a
communities.
tense time,
We
and,
didn't
and
want
this was an
to
opportunity
paint
for us to come
something
together and do
in
something
a community
creative
and say,
and
you know, we're gonna do
expressive
this to you. We
that
wanted to
really
go to
brought
these
those communities
communities and say,
together and
"Would you do this with
emphasize
us?"
the healing that can come when you see your communities out there caring about the things that are important and impacting, you know, the people that are all throughout our city. So that was kind of what we did this past year in 2020. It was a great experience. Next slide. That's the full mural there on Troost, and that's Michael Toombs in the bottom left. People from all across the city came out to participate in this. It was a really beautiful day. It was a really beautiful experience to build community. In the middle and the bottom, that is a picture of Alicia Keys walking into the Gym Theater, and I included that because Alicia Keys was set to play a concert, a non-attended concert at the World War I Museum. And then she heard about these Black Lives Matter murals, and she said, I want to go and do my concert at 18th and Vine at the Gym Theater where that Black Lives Matter mural is. And so, you know, it was a really cool thing for 18th and Vine to have that happen there. And the American Jazz Museum and the Negro Leagues Museum, I think, sold out that like the day after. It was, you know, it was a catalyst for people to re-engage with communities. And so that is really something that we want to continue to do, is use this, you know, this programming that we seem to be, you know, figuring out pretty well to bring communities together, to build communities, and do it where the community members are participating and expressing, you know, creativity, and also, you know, providing opportunities for the entrepreneurs that we work with to really hone their skills. So we're trying to accomplish a lot, and we've been told that more than once, but it seems to be working. So we'll be doing a lot more of that moving forward. Next slide. There's more of Michael's mural. If you haven't driven by any of these, you really should, especially this one on Troost. Michael can take you on a journey on this one. He's amazing. Next slide. So when we did Casey Art on the Block, we worked with 6 local Black artists. They're all down there on the bottom left. That's Michael Toombs, Warren Harvey, Adrienne Clayton, Vivian Blewett, Averion Jackson, and Harold Smith. And the thing is that is very interesting is that except for Michael Toombs, none of these other artists had ever created a mural of this size. We muraled over 2,000 linear feet of street, all in 2 days' time over a weekend. And not only had that never been done ever, but 5 of these artists had never even done something larger than a large canvas outside of Michael Toombs. So that was just another kind of wake-up call to us that we really always need to be thinking out. We need to be not limiting ourselves, limiting our talent that is around here. We need to be providing opportunities and paths for the talent and the artists and the entrepreneurs to grow and to do things that they have never done, and to help them and resource them so that they can be successful in that. And these artists have had so much opportunity since we did this project. It was featured in national news. Bloomberg City Lab and USA Today were 2 of the national papers that actually ran stories on this. And so we really believe that as long as we are bringing folks in and creating opportunities for them to really thrive and to do more and to have more exposure and experiences and opportunities, that's a good thing. And while we're doing it, we build community in the process. That's kind of what creative placemaking is. Next slide.
Oops.
Those are the posters that are a shameless plug available on Troost Market Collective's website of all of the 6 Black Lives Matter murals. We have signed ones by the artists as well. So shameless plug. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so what is up next? We really we really think that we're onto something with the creative placemaking and the programming that we've been able to pull off, and we will be doing more of that. That's a given. We have ideas for ongoing markets that would start when Troost Fest hits, which is another local festival in the spring, and that would culminate when Troostapalooza hits, which is in the fall, generally at the end of September, to really accomplish, again, that opportunity for these creative entrepreneurs to be selling, to be learning, to be honing their skills, working with other creative artisans, becoming more profitable and sustainable. That's very important. And doing that along Troost, where we're right now gaining community members by the droves. And we really hope that the community members that are coming to Troost will also value the things that we value, which is community, it's supporting entrepreneurs, and it's really just getting to know each other and building relationships across Troost. Because when you build relationships with somebody, you care about them. And when you care about them, you're more involved and more aware about the things that are going on in their neighborhoods or in areas or challenges that are going on with other communities. And we think that that's important. And we think that we can do that and bring people together on Troost. We also just launched Explore Troost, which is a website that features all of the businesses along the Troost corridor in the area that you've pretty much been looking at today and has been presented on today. We also have tabs of Black-owned businesses on this page and on our Troost Market Collective page. And we have we have features of some of the businesses along Troost, videos, so you can kind of get to know what's going on there. Our hope is to really provide that resource of high-level marketing material that showcases businesses in the light that that makes people want to go and explore, makes people want to go and say, oh, I've always wanted to try that coffee shop on Troost. Well, you watch the video and you're like, oh my gosh, that place looks amazing and I want to go now. So that's a service that we've offered at no cost for all of these businesses we've showcased on here. And any business that comes to Troost has the ability to sign up to be on Explore Troost, and we do that at no cost. We just really want people who are interested in exploring Troost to make the leap and to come and to spend their money there and to support these small businesses, and just add to the ever-growing community that we are building and forming on Troost. We are also looking to, at some point, go into a physical space so that we can provide kind of a physical incubator for the creative entrepreneurs that we're working with, because space is an important asset, but also a very expensive asset. And so we know that if we can have some of those options for these creative entrepreneurs that we work with, that they'll be able to thrive and learn from other folks that are there, and again, become more profitable, more sustained. And that's something that's important to us. These photos on the right-hand side are the interior of the Tim Bowman buildings before they started demoing the inside. That's the interior of a couple of the rooms in those buildings on the east side of the street on Troost. So these buildings have come a long way. Most of the buildings on Troost that existed prior have a past. So that's just a great example. Next slide. Oh, I'm done.
Chrissy, thanks. Does anybody have a question for her before we move on to Mary and Tyler? You're up, guys.
All right, let's just jump right to the next slide. So we thought we'd just start out and give you a little history. We've been pretty busy in the last couple of years. The picture on the left is the picture of the old Jones store before we did the renovations in 2018. And I will just say, as one lead in, if you were born after the 60s, you probably didn't even realize that had been a department store because it had been boarded up that long. And so that day in the summer of 18, when all the metal came off the building and you could see all the old shop windows and stuff, it was definitely a traffic stop, as people were coming down Troost. But anyway, that's where we have our school age program now, where we have STEM and related arts in our Maker City. And then on that first floor that you can see all the windows, Literacy KC provides services. We also have the gymnasium that we added, and we have five different conference rooms that we use for parent programming, but also for the community. And then it also houses we have a yoga studio and an art studio. All of our pre-K children have at least one session per week. And then we allow the community, other nonprofits to utilize that space when we're not using it, which makes it a really nice anchor for the community. And obviously the bridge connects both sides. We were able to actually add 6 additional early learning pre-K classrooms when we shifted our programming across the street, which leads us to over 700 children that we're now able to serve, almost double in size. And then during the day pre-COVID, bringing in schools, local schools, 4 schools, to basically do their science and math through a STEM lens with hands-on project work. Next slide.
So I'll jump in real quick with this one. So with our model, we're trying to bridge an opportunity gap. The majority of our kids, if you don't know much about Operation Breakthrough, come from high trauma houses. They're in the 6 zip codes surrounding Operation Breakthrough on 31st and Troost. And what we focus on is real world learning. And what that means is like getting your hands dirty. It's actually tinkering with things. It's taking things apart. We work with Ron Green actually with Digistory, doing animation and doing stop motion animation with a lot of our kids. And we go from pre-K, so young kids, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to right now 8th grade, which involves the Maker City. So if you walk into our building pre-COVID, or actually currently now too, there are a couple classrooms still going to our Makerspace. You'll see kids tinkering with clocks and with 3-year-olds playing with parachutes, and little ones, doing hands-on art activities and working with Osmo and different Kodu applications. And then you get into our Maker City, and these kids have actualized that program. So they're thinking critically. They're looking at collaboration, those bigger skills that really lead into career development when you're looking into the future. One of our biggest issues that we've always had is that we only go to 14. So when you go, you've got babies, and you have them until they're 14 years of age. And then it's like, okay, we did that program, and now, see you later. There's a big what if right there. So with our new initiative with the Ignition Lab, we're really looking to work toward kids that are powerful, that are now entrepreneurial, and they're looking toward career development, looking toward college if they want to, they're looking toward like internships and scholarships, and they're getting real world training for these big jobs that are happening right now in Kansas City. Next slide.
So just to give you a history, we have actually purchased now the muffler shop, but basically how that came to be is Travis Kelsey has been working with Operation Breakthrough for the last 5 years, and he actually sponsors our robotics lab and our robotics program. And when he was visiting right after we opened the new space, he said, so what happens next? And we talked about the fact that, kids age out at 14, and he's particularly passionate about high school and wanted to think about what could his legacy be for Kansas City. And so we had obviously had our eye on the muffler shop for quite a long time. And so he has actually purchased that for us, with that becoming our Ignition Lab, which basically, if you want to go to the next slide, will be a place for high school students to actually engage in workforce development and entrepreneurship. And it's going to do that. It's kind of a neat model in the sense that we're not going to try to do it all ourselves, but it's really a collective partnership between not only corporations in Kansas City, other nonprofits, and then obviously ourselves, to serve not only our students as they move into high school, but we'll use the same model that we have now during the day when our kids are at school. Because the way our school age model works outside of COVID is buses come in and take kids to 29 different schools, and then they come back after school. But we didn't want our current building to be empty during the day since the community had invested so much in it, and we don't want this to be empty. So we'll make it available to local schools. So we already have partnerships with Mind Drive, PCs for People, We Code KC, a variety of nonprofits, as well as education entities. We look to partner with those as well. And so as you look across this diagram, you can see everything from a co-working space to electronics to fabrication, both additive manufacturing, robotics. We're planning to have a food truck because we have a really strong culinary arts program. But that just gives you a little sense of what that will transform into. We'll be entering the planning phase with the city sometime over the next month, because we're going to be doing a lot consolidation between the garden lot that we have, because we'll be taking a little space of that, which is directly to the north. And then with the idea of breaking ground sometime in late March and opening in September. Next slide. Oh, Tyler, really quick before you talk about that, I did want to mention that, Diane, when you were talking earlier and you were talking about some of the goals, and I'm thinking about the fact that we do have a partnership with Sun Partners. So the roof of the center space, can you go back one slide for me? There's going to be in the center, there's a robotics kind of a covered pavilion. It doesn't show the cover here because we in that earlier rendering, but basically that will be covered in solar panels. And then the workshops on the exterior will also have solar power eyebrows. So it will be a really nice solar powered entity that will capture that. And the other thing is in terms of job development, when we opened the Maker City in the new building, we added over 50 jobs. One of the things we've been working to do is include our parents. And so we're getting ready to start a cohort of 20 of half of which are parents of our staff who have gone from high school diplomas to getting their initial certification for childcare. And now they're all ready to start this spring at MCCC to get their associates. So not only are we looking at jobs, but we're super excited that we're actually working with our team members to kind of progress. Okay, now you can go, and Tyler, you can highlight one of the areas.
So just a small dive into kind of what we're doing. We've been partnering with Mary mentioned earlier corporations like Garmin. So we've looked at what are those skills that Kaufman has been kind of looking at for the upcoming jobs of next year and the 5 years beyond, and that's kind of how we picked the focus areas of our bays and our labs. One of which is electrical. So Garmin's working with us to look at what does it take to have a child from 14 to 18 really look at the skills they need to become a professional working for Garmin or internship with Garmin, and then taking those skills, and you'll see it in a couple slides ahead. But what skills do we need to have under our belts before we can even think about joining the Garmin crew? And so those skills, as an example for the electrical bay, we're going to focus on those like market value assets that those kids need in order to get a job working with Garmin for $65,000, $70,000. So these kids are going to have opportunities coming out of the gate, just ready for the job in the future. So you could probably hit the next slide. Some of these topic areas you'll see here. So just this one lab, we have how many labs now, Mary? Is it 10 or 12?
10.
10. So 10 areas, one of which Mary mentioned earlier, the solar power panels. We're going to have one called Green Tech, and the Green Tech, the kids are going to be able to actually maintain, audit, and understand how all the solar panels work, and be able to use that for companies like Evergy, companies that they can easily, transition into an internship with major corporations. With going to college or not, with MCC coming so close to us, I'm so excited. because it's an opportunity to go down the block and be able to work with NCC directly. These kids can decide, to enroll, and if they've already got the transportation with 31st and Troost and all that development, then what's stopping them? It's a fantastic development. But if you look at the slide here, you'll see some of the ideas that we've got, the electric basics, tools, analytics, digital electronics and power electronics. These are all simple things that I don't know anything about, but these professionals that are coming in to help us, they understand this stuff, and they're going to be teaching these things to the kids on 31st and Troost, which is extremely powerful. You can next slide. Mary, do you want to hit on some of the concepts and some of the skills?
So all of the bays have been designed this way so that there's a definite set of skills that kids will learn. There's concepts that we'll talk about, different career connections. So kids really have those pathways that they can choose as they graduate from high school, whether they go on for additional certification or to complete a certification, go on to college, or straight into the workforce. The goal is that we will have these for each of the areas. And then the projects, if you go to the next slide, look at the types of projects that kids will do. Some of those will be definitely kind of 2 inches deep, where they'll do a project that will draw from different spaces, whether it's multimedia, robotics, electronics, or additive manufacturing, or so they can decide whether or not they have an interest. For example, if I do a project where I fly a drone and I take photographs of something like a landmark in the city, and then I take those and through software, I create a 3D image of that, and then I could go on to either screen print it, I could 3D print it, I could use it as an animation in a video game that I'm developing. Kids will start to figure out what they're really excited about, and then can do a deep dive. For kids that have been at Operation Breakthrough since they're babies, they already start coding when they're 3 and they do projects in elementary and middle. They may already be in a place to do something more. So we're building it so there's a continuum for kids that can insert at any place. They could insert in preschool, elementary, or they can insert at high school with pathways to partners in the neighborhood. I noticed your comment, which said great transition. Absolutely. So when we saw Penn Valley coming in, we were super excited because it's just a natural extension of the work that we plan to do. And it feels like it's a great place for the community to collaborate, not only for local schools to have access, but for the kids that have been growing up here.
And Mary, do you want to answer the question that was posed about De La Salle, our connection and collaborative efforts with
Oh
De La
yes, De La Salle actually helped us in terms of thinking through some of this. They actually spent last year with their freshmen and sophomores coming to the current Makers City, doing not only their entrepreneurship but their career exploration. And what's nice about the Ignition Lab is it's being built for high school, and so kids will be able to come, and whether they do something with Mind Drive, or they do something in fabrication, or they're doing something in electrical or robotics, or computer refurbishing tech or green tech, they will have a chance to choose across those options, and then look at certifications or skill development. So they will be one of the schools that will use it during the day.
And Chrissy, to mention, your idea about entrepreneurship, and how powerful it is in Kansas City. We're going to be creating some of these, jewelry makers and artists and engineers and auto mechanics and people that are going to be extremely powerful in Kansas City if we can.
Well, and I'll finish on that note. I mean, when Travis was here and we were talking about it, we said, you know what, if you've been coding since you were 6 and suddenly, at age 14, or you already know at age 10 how to film and edit a video, at age 14, you need a space sometimes to just continue to work in an entrepreneurial fashion. Same with our culinary arts kids. We're super excited to have a food truck in which they'll be able to not only take those business plans that they write, but they'll have a chance to execute on them. So that's what's happening in the Ignition Lab. So it's going to be a busy year.
Gary, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. keep forgetting to hit the button, sorry. Ron, you want to go to the next one?
Sure.
I'm gonna finish this off. That's our building as it currently stands. Next one, Ron. You can do this one better than I can. You want to do it?
Okay. This slide is designed to show people that that building at near 31st and Troost is more than just the place where Walt got his start and where he toyed with that pet mouse that later became inspiration for Mickey. This is also known as the cradle of Hollywood animation, because the people that Walt trained in this building to do stop motion or to do animation later joined him in California and later were recruited by all the major movie companies there to start animation studios that became the crux of the cartoon industry in America. So we had Walt, who, as you all know, became the founder of Walt Disney Company when he moved to California. But we also have Ub Iwerks, who was one of the fastest and best animators of his time. He's actually the person who who finessed the Mickey Mouse character into the successful character that he was. And he's also known for many other innovations in digital media and animation. You have Fritz Frayling, who didn't work at Laugh-O-Gram, but he worked with Walt in the Kansas City Slide Company and later joined him when he started his efforts in California. He went on from there to become kind of the genius behind the Warner Brothers label. And he hooked up with Carl Stalling. Carl Stalling had worked with Walt in Kansas City to do sing-along animations for the movie theaters. And Carl was notable because he did all the music for Warner Brothers. In fact, he created the theme song, da, 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 da. And he also was credited with creating click track technology that allowed animation to move from silent movies to movies with sound. You have people like Rudy Ising and Hugh Harmon, who joined forces to create the Harmonizing Studio. Great use of their names, but they, along with Ub Iwerks and others, were instrumental in establishing the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoon. They hired and trained Hanna-Barbera. And this isn't even all of the pioneers that came out of Laugh-O-Gram. There's, for example, Ben Bugs Hardaway, who is the guy that created the Bugs character. In fact, it was named after him, Bugs Bunny. These people and several others all came from Kansas City, and they are the pioneers that really formulated what Hollywood would later build into a major empire. So these are significant, and a lot of people in Kansas City are not fully aware of the significance of this as an important part of American animation history.
Just real quickly, Ron's right. I mean, this building represents probably the most significant aggregation of artistic and entrepreneurial talent possibly in Kansas City history. This is a shot, of course, with Walt and his drawing of Mickey Mouse. You can see him actually working on it. I think most of you know that Walt fed a small mouse while he was in the Laugh-O-Gram building, ultimately turning it loose before he left for California. Ron, you want to go to the next one? This one, I think, kind of summarizes what we've got in front of us. That it's one of Walt's favorite phrases. If you can dream it, you can do it. Always remember that this whole thing was started a dream in a mouse. So from our standpoint, we've got a long haul to go with regard to particularly raising the money that we're going to need to get this done. But I think the vision that we've got is an appropriate one. We're building on a legacy of probably one of the most successful animators, and I'm doing that plural, and also one of the most successful companies internationally that the United States sees today. Ron? That's the vision that Gould Evans has got for the building. Go to the next one. So that's the opening shot of our website for Thank You Walt Disney, and we encourage you to go there. It's there at the bottom, and it's also going to be in the chat section of, so if you want to see and learn more about it. But the important thing is that there's really 4 component parts of that building. One is that we hope to be the Midwest Center for digital media training. We've got 15 allies in colleges that run from K-State on the west to MU at Columbia on the east. And our hope is that we can get them to work together with us to put together digital media training for website design and marketing and those kinds of things, so that we can attract talent from all over the Midwest and possibly all over the country. Second part of it will be a museum in memory to Disney and to the other animators that worked in that building and that came out of Kansas City as well. And there'll be a lecture and theater on the first floor, west part of it. Our hope is to attract great animation into that theater and also great animators to be able to motivate people for what we hope will be that digital media training facility. And lastly, a co-working space. We've had a great working relationship now for about 4 or 5 months with Gerald Smith and FlexPod. So we're hoping that about half, a little bit more of that second floor will be available for co-working space for entrepreneurs. So the vision is that it's a facility that we hope is going to heal the racial and economic divide of Troost and provide the entrepreneurial energy for a new generation of Kansas City young people. That's pretty much it. It's open for question and answers.
So first, I'd like to thank all the presenters. This has been just a wonderful session of good detailed information about all the wonderful progress people are making in really transforming that Troost corridor. So thank you all for sharing that with us. I'm sure there are a lot of questions out there. So Gary, you want to take any questions, anyone, or any comments anyone may want to take at this point?
It's open for almost anybody with regard to questions for the other presenters or for the representatives. Dan Veach, who's the president of our board, sitting there doing something on his computer.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tyann Lee, and I'm the campus president at MCC Penn Valley. And I just want to thank you all for this presentation and for sharing all this information, because we are excited about our new facility that will open up on Troost. I would like to offer for the next meeting, if possible, that our team could come and do a presentation on that facility and what will be inside and where we are to date with it. So I just put that out there for an opportunity for us to come back and do a presentation. Thank you.
We would love that, Taiwan. Thanks for that offer. Very exciting that your programs are going to be right there close to all of this activity.
Very quiet.
Other comments, questions? I have a question for either Mary or Tyler. So the area that was in front of the muffler shop that didn't have the roof, that is kind of is that an open air area or is that an enclosed? And what was that again?
So that's going to be an open air pavilion. It's the size of a robotics field, so that we can also use it for robotics practice and tournaments, but it can also be used as a multi kind of use pavilion for gathering and occasions. So because on the opposite side, in the rendering that you saw, we went from nothing there to then using containers, and now we're actually have a metal building that's coming in, and that will house not only the additive manufacturing but all of the heavy equipment. And then on the far end there's more of a multi-purpose workshop and a wash pod. Those are the exterior buildings on the other side of that pavilion.
Great.
Just an observation, I find it interesting that through no plan whatsoever, you've now got probably 4 educational and training institutions within spitting distance of one another. in the future. With the Kansas City, Missouri School District, pretty much right across the street from the new Penn Valley facility that's being built. I think there's all kinds of opportunities for us to find ways that we can collaborate with one another.
Yep.
Gary and Ron, this is Brian. I would just like to add, I have thoroughly enjoyed and benefited from being able to sit in on this program and hear about all the wonderful things happening in the area. It's incredible. And we know that there have been much more challenges in the past where the opportunities we've discussed were not very clear, but it's happening. Lots of development, lots of investment, thankfully good policy guiding it. And I appreciate being able to be here as both a participant in the audience listening and then being able to share on the panel. Job well done. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Brian. Other comments, thoughts, questions?
Very quiet.
I guess I have one question, which is, for me, I look at all the housing development and I still have a sense that it's not going to be family driven. So as much as we would love to see more opportunities for our families to be able to live within the area, it feels like a lot of the building is in smaller size apartment units or not as affordable as might be. So I'm curious, we didn't necessarily talk on all of them, price points and size, but I think that's, for me, I love to see all the development. I just want it to be accessible.
Yeah, Mary, I might just add that we have been working with Amethyst Place specifically on that initiative. They have the same concerns. They're really active in the Troost corridor. They serve families, and many of their families are also clients of Operation Breakthrough.
Yep.
And I think that that's a real gap. I think one of the challenges with apartment development, especially the style and size of apartment development that we've been talking about in this corridor, is that it's really difficult with these small pieces of land to fit the style of what I'm going to call townhome or more family-friendly amenities outside. And there's some great sites tucked into some of these neighborhoods that are a lot larger and don't have the same, what I'm going to call pedestrian constraints with high traffic flow that we think would just be really ideal for more family style, affordable, multifamily type of development.
That's great to hear.
And Mary, this is Diane Cleaver. I mean, I want to say that's a big concern of ours, family friendly and affordable. And we've been doing a lot of work at the policy level with the city to try to really get some policy changes that would promote mixed use development. I think a lot of it will probably have to occur, at least initially, in the adjacent blocks. I think that's what Audrey was referring to. We would love to have seen some along Troost, and maybe that will happen. But much of Troost in the immediate area has developed. But we think it's really going to take some policies from the city about inclusive housing and mixed income, and we've been working on that.
Great.
Thanks, Diane. But I'm so glad that we're discussing this. One of the other things that I think that has not been discussed is all of the value add that we're bringing to Troost, which was a lot of empty lots prior and empty buildings. That is going to have an impact on the value of all of the homes that have been there and in the surrounding areas for a long time. Property taxes are going to go up for people who aren't in the Beacon Hill 10-year tax abatement areas, and that's a huge concern of ours. We would love to see some policy discussions with the county about some creative ideas on how to make sure that people don't get priced out of their homes simply because their tax assessments are pricing them out. We know that we can have a great community retaining the residents that have been there for a long time and adding new residents but we can't if the good that we're doing, which is the good value adding that we're doing to the area, is having a negative impact on community members who have been there for decades. So that's another piece of policy that I think we'd be very interested in exploring.
Chrissy, on that one, just my background in economic development is not in residential, but one of the things when we saw the Jackson County property taxes begin to go up, this was probably 20 years ago in the southern part of the downtown area. It was pushing out the artists. Jim Leedy's taxes went up, Jackson County taxes went up fourfold in 1 year because of the commercial development that was taken off. And one of the things, and Bob Long still down at the EDC, Bob was the main one that did really the footwork on putting together a long-term property tax abatement specifically for facilities that had over 50% use by artists. The same thing can be done with regard to protecting particularly older and longer term property owners in that area. But this is not an easy one to do. And it means in essence that there's got to be a political will to do it. You've got to get the property owners, people like Jim Leedy that basically was watching his property taxes go through the roof, that got in behind and suggested to the council that you need to get creative with it. So we did a pretty good job, I think, on the southern part of downtown with regard to holding on to those arch uses as a result of it. And they just extended it. They did it through the Planned Industrial Expansion Authority's property tax abatement, which can freeze property taxes for prolonged periods of time. But you got to get you have to have the political will to get it done.
You're absolutely right. And you know, I think that this group right here is a great group to lead the call on that. I don't see that a lot of our grandmothers and aunties and people who have been in houses for a really long time are going to be the ones who are going to organize and go, you know, knock on the door of Jackson County and say, we really need to do something now or it's going to be too late. I think that as stewards of the community that we are becoming, whether we're acquiring property, building property, programming, or providing opportunities for that community, I mean, I think that we really should be good stewards of the community that was there before we got there. And I'm happy to help if anybody wants to help with me. I think that we'll regret not moving on this in 15 years if we don't do something now.
Chrissy, this is Diane Cleaver again, and Gary. You know, our city needs a comprehensive housing policy, and that's we have a coalition that's of over 20 organizations, individuals, neighborhood organizations, and that's what we're really pushing for. I mean, the city knows they need that, but we need a push. And part of that gets to the tax abatement issue for current homeowners. Such things as freezing the taxes of longtime homeowners as development occurs. And, you know, there are some abatement opportunities, as Gary and others well know, in urban renewal areas when people, you know, put some dollars into their home, they can get some tax abatement. But it's all part of a much needed comprehensive housing policy for the city. And that tax issue that you referenced is on the list of things that needs to occur.
Well, count me in, Diane. If you need to tap me in, I'm here. Let me know if I can help.
Well, I would love to help as well, because I think that's our big number one challenge right now for families.
The other one you ought to take a look at is you've got a tax increment financing district. It's the largest one in Kansas City. It's the heart of America, TIF. And that gives you the opportunity to use that or the Planned Industrial Expansion Authority to do it. You don't have to go to the county. I wouldn't do it. I don't know that they've got the tools, and I don't think that they've got the experience in doing it, Chrissy. I think you need to keep it focused on KCMO and see whether you can't engage the successes that you've had with regard to that kind of tax freeze with the existing tools that you have. The one, I'll tell you, the one I worry about more than anything else is that the market will drive market rate development, which is not good for poor folks. That's the bottom line on it. And the only way to get some kind of low income housing built into that is to subsidize it with either some form of incentives, or you tie your incentives to some portion of those apartments being lower income, or, and this has been the tough one, particularly for the state of Missouri, their housing programs, thanks to a governor who didn't last very long, unfortunately, he pretty much shut down a lot of those low, or severely constrained a lot of those things. That's got to be a push that comes back, because the city of Kansas City doesn't have the resources to subsidize particularly the development of those low to moderate income housing facilities. And that needs to be a priority.
Yeah, Gary, I might just add, one of the things we're really excited about is the LIHTC program and the future of the LIHTC program, given the extra federal boost that has been created. As we look at development opportunities with LIHTC, I can tell you hands down, we never considered LIHTC in the state of Missouri over the past 5 years because of what you just described. But now with some additional federal subsidy in that category for the 4% credits, I think a lot of developers are rethinking that. And not only rethinking it for what I'm going to call adaptive reuse or renovation projects, but particularly for new construction in qualified census tracts. Because if you are in a qualified census tract, and most of the corridor that we're talking about is, there is a substantial federal boost in the subsidy for those projects, and that allows you, back to Mary's point, to build properties that aren't teeny tiny footprints. So you can be a little bit more intentional about the size and style of development that really is missing in that neighborhood, which is 2 and 3 bedroom. Maybe even some 4-bedroom footprints, which again, they only exist in single family homes. And it's so hard to scale single family home affordable development.
Yep. I agree. I'll tell you the other one too, then we'll get off this and let you guys go have dinner or a good stiff drink somewhere. Kansas City's got to get out of the habit of only looking to the state of Missouri for additional resources. You're going to have, with all things hopeful, you're going to have a new president and vice president here on the 20th. And it's time for Kansas City to make a beeline for Washington, D.C. and talk to them about what they can do. The other one, Audrey puts her finger right on it. I watched the frustration they had of trying to consolidate ownership on those properties that the junk dealer had for, too long. The fact of the matter is that there's all kinds of vacant property out there in little bitty parcels. The city needs to have a very quiet acquisition and assembly strategy. We've done it once before on Paseo West. We need to do it again, particularly east of Troost. But that's going to require money. It requires funding, and it requires that the city staff do this very quietly. Otherwise, the price on that property goes through the roof. So that's the wisdom of an old gray-haired guy on a late Thursday night. Is there anything else for the good of the order now that we've got off on development? And I think maybe we can see whether we can convene a Zoom on issues for the general area, maybe once, say, every other month, to kind of talk to each other, because I know we're all busy. Although Ron and I are retired, so we're not busy at all. So
we're busy doing this.
Yeah. Well, the other one, at some point, I've got to go out there and start begging money from rich donors. So
yeah, this is Diane Cleaver again. I don't know if this would address what you mean, but we're about to convene the true stakeholders that came up with the plan, and to really get an update on what everyone's doing, but also update on our progress on the Community Improvement District. You know, we used to meet fairly regularly, and maybe we'll get semi-regular meetings going again.
Yeah.
Is that when we were meeting at Reconciliation and then a couple times here?
That's right. That's
Right.
Thanks.
10 to late, folks. We're actually a little bit ahead of time. I didn't think we were going to get this thing done. Just thank you to everybody who was a presenter. Thank you to all the attendees. If you have an interest in participating, Ron just slapped up the KC Imagine, which is kind of a sponsoring entity for this, which is really part of, thank you, Walt Disney. We need your help, particularly with regard to the capital campaign that we're facing. Probably, we hope to get it started the second quarter of 2021 with the hope that by that time, COVID-19 has begun to die out, literally. So again, we thank you. Any other questions before we cut this off? Hearing none, I appreciate your participation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys,
You
Good evening.
take care.
good night.